Peace and blessings and shalom, everyone. I hope you guys enjoy your Day of Atonement. I know I needed to atone for a lot, so I just wanted to give my thanks to everyone who's joining me. I know you guys probably are eating right now, breaking your fast, and we want to have a conversation today in regards of early understanding, having a scholarly understanding of what happened in first century. Well, I'm not screaming that first century, but 19th century America. What was happening? We all know that the 18th, 17th, and 16th century, they had the slavery. But after slavery, what was happening? What kind of laws were being passed? And I want to have a conversation about that very topic today. So I'm going to put a presentation together. So I hope you guys will follow me along. This presentation is called "The Secret History of Polygamy in America." Okay, we're going to touch on that. But before we start, make sure you like, you subscribe, make sure you spread the news. Gabar is on. I'm about to give you a history lesson. Also, a lot of people, not a lot, but a few people had texted me email me, or put in the messaging board that they thought that I had more subscribers, because a lot of people may not know that my previous channel was hacked and I'm starting all over again. So if you think you have subscribed, just double check. Because I'm starting everything all over again. So just make sure you like and subscribe and pray that spread the news that Gabar is on the new I Am Fit podcast, which is the same channel, same name. Nothing has changed. It's just I'm starting everything all over again. All right, so I want to have a conversation about our mindset. Do our environment reflect our mindset, or manipulate our mindset, or even inspire our mindset to think a certain kind of way? Certain cultural scenarios like polygamy, or many people, I'm pretty sure when they began to keep Sabbath, it got weird for them, right? I'm pretty sure sometimes people that were adopting the Hebrew culture, the laws of God given by the Most High in a Mount Sinai to Moses, and then later to the Israelites, and then to the world, because the law is supposed to be given to the world, right? God chose the nation of Israel to give his will, what he wants humanity to live and how to live, to Israel to spread, to influence the rest of the world, right? But even before Israel, he gave it to humanity. He gave it to Adam to give it to his children, but we all know what happened there. So I want to touch on this lesson. And let me go here. Let me open it up at my end. In regards of this history. So I want to just touch on some articles. I got all the articles below, and there's a video that I want you guys to watch dealing with the secret history of polygamy in America, early America. The description is below. We're gonna listen a little of the show or of the conversation, what was going on in the 18th, 19th century in regard to this question, right? Because many people believe that when America was being established, that monogamy was already a thing that was accepted, right? And I think this show should be one of the show that I'm going to be dealing with, or I'm not going to be touching this subject for a while, but I just want to touch on this subject for a little more, because I think it's necessary. Okay, so this is race treason. Okay, this is the untold story of Americans' ban on polygamy okay, by Martha Eatman, okay, Eatman, right? So I like this particular article, and I like the way she approached it, because she approached it from a perspective that she listed all the court findings. Shout out brother Daryl Woods for that super chat. I appreciate you, man. I see that here. I appreciate you, man. Thank you for the support. If you guys want to support the either PayPal or super chat, the information is below. I am fit podcast 1 for super chat, and I am hashtag I am fit for PayPal, right? So it makes the only difference is the number 1 in the Cash App. So thanks a lot, brother, for that support. All right, so I want to touch on this subject because this lady kind of put it together from all the courts findings and all the arguments and all the propaganda that was happening at that time to get rid of polygamy. Now, America was redefining himself after the Civil War. Slavery was a thing of the past. The argument was already established that slavery is inhumane. And then they had to basically say, okay, how this new America is going to look like. So they were redefining themselves and establishing certain things, dealing with people of color living for free, which was a new phenomenon in American history, right? So a lot was going on in the turn of the 19th century in regards of taking care of or getting rid of white supremacy anxiety in regards of free black people, right? So let me just read this real quick. Okay, bear with my reading. It says, today's bans on polygamies grew out of the 19th century Americans' view that Mormons committed 2 types of treason. First, anti-polygamists charged Mormon with with political treason by establishing a separate theocracy in Utah, because after the Mormons their religion became some steam. Joseph Smith, which I don't subscribe to that religion. I don't subscribe to the Book of Mormons. I read it several times, and it's really a plagiary book, and it's really it's like the same thing what the Muslim did with the Quran, takes from the Bible and kind of create their own doctrine, is what the Book of Mormon is. There's really no new revelation in that book. And if anybody wants to have a conversation about that, we can, but what I have researched is really was a book that was put together by the people that was handling Joseph Smith to give the illusion that God gave a new revelation. Okay. It says, by establishing in Utah. Second, they saw a social treason against the nation of white citizens when Mormon adopted the supposedly barbaric matrimonial form, that's like being married to someone, matrimonial form, one that was natural for Asiatics and African people, but so unnatural for whites as to produce a new degenerate species that trended the project of white supremacy, right? Let me move to the next slide. Okay. And I'm just going to scan through this real quick. Okay. Because what happened is that they began to look at, let me put this over here. My apologies. Oop, here we go. Okay. So what happened is they began to look at, two threats. A church getting so powerful, they are able to control entire Justin Woods. Thank you, brother, for that super chat. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Okay. Love you guys. You guys are sustaining me. Okay. Thank you. So, let me just put this here. Bear with me. Boop. Boop. Okay. So, and let me move to the other article. Okay. So the threat by, Okay, let me back up. White Protestant Anglo-Saxon believe that their culture was superior than any other culture. So any culture that came out, or any tradition that came out of black or brown people, black, brown, yellow, pick your color, they felt it was inferior. And since they were practicing monogamy, and monogamy came from Europe, and before Protestants were Protestants, they were Catholics. Before Catholics were Catholics, they were Romans. And Romans adopted, long before Christ, the policy of monogamy. And I touched on that on the previous show. When did monogamy become a right, not a privilege? That Roman soldiers and Roman diplomats and Roman men in general view that it was disrespect or degrade themselves if they marry a woman who had been touched by another man in regards of producing their children, their heir. So virgins were very valuable back then. And so to give men of a lower estate the option to also marry, they say, okay, we're going to get rid of a polygamy from a legal perspective, right? To give every man an opportunity to marry a virgin to produce an heir. Now, you could have slaves, and those women you could have sex with as much as you want, but you don't have children with those women, right? Because it was a thing that it was felt to, you marrying someone outside of your nation, and also marrying a woman who has been touched by other men, like prostitutes or loose women, or widows. It was considered to be a step down in society, right? So let me Mormons as race traitors, right? Treason. It says the racial aspect of anti-monogamy legislation charged white Mormons with causing the physical and moral degradation of their race by engaging in a matrimonial practices that was unnatural for them, even as it was natural for the purportedly backward deciduous people as Asia and Africa. But before reconstructing those arguments and illustration them with cartoons of the day. So they began to do propaganda, right? During the day. We're going to touch on some of these pictures and some of these propaganda pictures that they began to demonstrate. In the article, it goes into much more in depth and much more detail on the court findings or the court rulings and so forth, so on, and also what was going on in the music industry, and also in the magazine, newspaper articles that journalists began to attack this argument as inferior, culturally speaking, right? Let's see here. Yeah, it says, haven't the Mormons always been white? Now, what people need to understand, that term white wasn't always associated with skin color. White, or being white, came with a philosophy and an outlook. And that's why a lot of the folks that are from, what are those guys? The Moors and some of, the guys that get into the notion that black people were the original Native Americans and things of that nature. Now, I do agree that there were black natives here before the Europeans conquering this continent. But it was a monumentation of different racial group, black and brown and things of that nature. The tribes of Israel were all here, and we all come from different colors. Some had coarse hair, some had straight hair, because we like a speckled bird, right? So they did not classify Mormons, although being white as snow, because they were practicing a culture which the white populace believed it was an inferior, and it was a culture that came from black and brown people, which they deemed to be barbaric, right? I'm referring to polygamy. So I just want to just kind of give you the historical reference why this thing got changed in America, right? I said, it may seem odd to adopt Mormons as black or detect Mormons as black or Asian when they were almost entirely white. Indeed, while Mormons settlers married Native American women on occasion, Mormon excluded African Americans from full church participation or membership, until the year 78, This whiteness, pay attention, according to many anti-polygamists, were precisely the problem. Because they were white and they were practicing polygamy, that was the problem. Anti-polygamists did not see blacks as acting black as a problem. Pay attention. Since they supposedly reflected natural differences between races. But while following practices arrogated to Asian or black undermined the premises of justifying white supremacy, right? So meaning, if you practice polygamy, you acting like those black people. You acting like those Asian people. You acting like those Native American people. This is the turn of the 19th century, right? You have different groups now coming in, right, into the country. You have also the gold rush. So now they have to redefine what does it mean to be an American. So I want you guys to look at something here. That they were going against Mormons. Not because they had this crazy religion that believed that God was some alien or some God in another planet with multiple wives, and they actually God slept with Mary, produced Christ. Satan and Christ were brothers. Their belief was clearly off the beaten path, right? But the number one thing they had an issue with was what? Polygamy, which they view as barbaric and not European, right? So let me go to the next slide real quick. Okay. It says, and I'm going to show the pictures in a much larger form for you guys to see what I'm talking about here. It says, again and again, commentaries from high culture, media, and legal aspect, mainly the popular culture, cartoonists, and author of magazines, articles, portraying Mormons as barbaric, lasciviousness, depolnic, that word means like over the top or, being over the top. That's the best way to describe it. Disorderly, foreign, blacks and Asian, and or childish. Perhaps the best example, Uncle Sam Troublesome Bedfellows, published in the West just a few months after the court announced its decision in Reynolds. Now, Reynolds was actually a white man. He was an abolitionist, and I don't know if he was a Mormon, but he had 2 wives. And he sued the federal government for the federal government not recognizing his 2 wives, right? And let me show you the picture real quick. So and I'm gonna go who he is and all that in a few minutes. Now there's the picture here. Let me just remove my okay, remove my, if you guys can see the full aspect of this thing, right? So this guy represents Uncle Sam. The bear represents America, and this represents a Native American. This represents a so-called African American. This, I believe, represents an Irish, and this represents, of course, a Chinaman, and this represents a Mormon, right? And let me read the caption. It says, Uncle Sam, representing the country, share a big bed with 3 troublesome bedfellows and is in the process of kicking out 2 other lumping Mormons, Chinese, Native Americans, blacks, and Irish figures as troublesome bedfellows. Serves 2 purposes. First, it suggests a common debasement of all five groups. Second, it distinguishes all of them from Uncle Sam, Edward says, explain in the canonical context how distinguish people or groups as problems rather than human beings, right? So what is it saying? It's saying that it was looking, and because these are people that they view as not white, not Protestant, and not, a lesser race. And although they accepted these other race, they say, this is our country, white, Protestant, Christian, Anglo-Saxons, and we're going to give some of these black and brown people some rights, and these pesky, Irish people, right? Because the Irish people are like the black people, the N-word of the white race. For some, that's a whole different story, and we could get into what that is. There is some history of Ireland being Israelite in that area. There's a lot of Israelite presence. There's a book called When Ireland Was Jewish. You guys can look it up. I'm probably botching the title, but there could be some connection there. But that's a different conversation altogether. But it clearly shows the disdain for these other groups. But it shows that it wasn't about your skin color, because Irish were white and Mormons were white, but they did not follow the white Protestant Anglo-Saxon point of view. And that point of view was monogamy, right? So I just want you guys to get into the political mindset of what's going on, the political landscape that was going on at that time. All right, let me go here. This is this guy. He was a guy, because I noticed that even now, when you got CNN and even Fox and these so-called news propaganda machines, they'll bring these experts to bring forth an argument, scientific or historical, whatever. They did the same thing with this case. I forgot the guy's name. The abolishing monogamy or fighting against polygamy, because this case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, right? And they had a problem, and the problem is that in the Constitution, in the First Amendment, it gives you freedom of speech and freedom of religion, expression. So they have to concoct some crazy issue to go against monogamy. Go against polygamy. But why is that? What was polygamy so? Why they fought it so hard? They actually went to war with the Mormons. We're gonna get into that. The war lasted with like 3 major wars. It kind of like came and went, but it was lasting a span of 50 years. Half the time of the Seminole Wars, lasted about 100 years, right? So let's read this real quick. It says, one territorial officer, Benjamin Francis, voiced his concern in 1854 reports to Congress declaring that polygamy belongs now to the indognate, meaning like this inferior, and opium-eating Turks and Asiatics, and the miserable Africans. So he said polygamy belongs to these folks, showing you the connection. They view polygamy as a barbaric form of marriage, right? The North American savages, right? And the Latter-day Saints, which were the Mormons, right? So this gives you an insight on how they view polygamy and who did they associate polygamy with people like us, the Hebrews, right? The people of the sun, the indigenous, right? And this is not to bring any racial tension between black and white. We got to stop all that, because the super elite, okay, they don't care about race. They care about money, power, and control. We're the one that they get caught up with race. But I'm just going to the history when the monogamy became the norm here in America, specifically in the 19th century, right? So let's see what we got here. This is another depiction of how heavy this thing was at that time, right? In regards to the political issue. Now, this was their problem. I'm not involved in one way or the other. I'm not for or against the Mormons. They could do their thing. They're not, that's not my culture and that's not my religion. But it just gives you an insight how far these people went to get rid of polygamy here in America. So let me read the caption. It says, the cartoon despect a furious eagle, stars and stripes in its wings representing the United States, protecting its nest, which label Union inside. The nests are eagles, all white, which label with label for each state. A Karen Crow label Utah, because that's where the Mormon was at, raised up in their midst, claiming a bone laboring Mormonism. So when you look at, I put the actual, highlighted the black crow saying it's Utah, because they were the black sheep of this whole thing because of one thing, polygamists. Showing you that this was like, they wanted to get rid of it. But it wasn't the Mormons that was the threat in regards to polygamy. We're going to go into this. Someone else. Let's see here. It says, yes, it says, anti-polygamists in context sought either to maintain or reinstate white supremacy, perhaps hoping to limit the scope of slave emancipation by acquiring racial mixing with this order and conventionally associating racial anarchy with this domestic political order. In other words, simply, I'm sorry with my reading. In other words, many 19th century America condemned slavery for harming blacks and polygamy with harming whites. Why were they concerned with polygamy harming whites? For one reason. It wasn't part of their culture. It was a culture of others, right? And we all know how they view those others. And there was an issue with the census at that time. We're going to go into that. This is a cartoon of the day, and I want you guys to notice there's a black child over here. Now, why is a black child in the picture of these satire cartoonists of the day, right? This is 1881, April 19. The elders, the term elders is reference to the Mormons because they used to call themselves elders. Okay, happy home. So here you got the guy on top of the closet, right? And you got all the wife arguing with each other, right? And then you have all the children, crying and things like that. But peculiarly speaking, there is a black child there. Why is that? So-called. Because it was disrespectful it was satire for a white Anglo-Saxons to do some form of cartoonist depiction of white people with black features. They did that with, what's his name? Lincoln, President Lincoln. Now there's rumor that he might have some, he was like some black in him somewhere in his family, albino, or not albino, what's that, half white, half black, what's the, mulatto, there you go. But that's a different conversation. They used to paint people dark skinned if they represented or they were in the favor of getting rid of slavery or pro-black or even picking up a culture of being black. That's where the black face came in because they realized, okay, black people are entertaining with the singing and the dancing. Okay, I'm going to do it as a black man making fun of them. Right? So this is the Mormon Wars. Now, the Mormons didn't just simply lie down. They fought back. And there was a war. You can look it up and start in 38, excuse me, the Mormon Wars, right? They began to fight back with their satire, and also it got physical, right? You guys can look that up as well. Yes, this article, so there was a anxiety, mismagination was anxiety played a central role in 19th century white supremacy. After the Civil War, courts and legislation defined and then redefined the corner of black American citizenship through their decision first to invalidate misdesignation. This is mixed racing law. So they had to kind of agree to these laws and these philosophy of saying that, and that term, misdesignation, I'm pronouncing that wrong, that word wrong, my apology, I'm Spanglish. It just means mix, that the philosophy or the theory that if you mix races, you will bring forth disease, will bring forth a decrease of your morals, and it's not good for the human race. Each race should stay with their own race. So, let me go to the next article. Why were they having this problem, this constant battle over polygamy? Well, these are the census of the day. Okay, I want to read the article in the bottom. It says the statistics shows the population. This is in the 1860. The population of the United States in 1860 by race and gender. Check this out. The statistics show the population of the United States in the final census year before the American Civil War show by race and gender. From the data, we can see that there were almost 27 million white people, 4.5 million black people, and 80,000 classes of other. The population of men to women were different for each categories, with roughly 700,000 more white men than women and 100,000 more black women than men. So there were more white men and there were more black men than women in this time in the 1860s. It says almost 3 times as many men than women in the other categories. The reason for the higher male numbers in the white and other category is because men migrated to the U.S. at a higher rate than women. Because at the moment, the gold rush, there were people coming in. While there is no concrete explanation for the statistics regarding black people. So they don't know why there were more black men, there were black women, but they could, clearly see, okay, it was clearly the migration of white men coming over. The gold rush, right, in that time. Conquering the West. So now we understand the white Protestant mindset that they were saying, okay, we don't have much women to begin with. So we can't practice polygamy even if we wanted to. But we allow polygamy. We allow 2 things: mixed racing, allowing a black man or a brown man to marry a white woman, and allowing polygamy. What do you think would ever happen? Because there was a fear within the white Protestant community, that black people, brown people, we were sexually more endowed, if you will. We just love having sex and, and having babies and all that. The same type of stereotype that we have now within the African American, Latino, Native American community. So they will feel that all the white women will start marrying brown and black people if they allowed mixed racing. So they made that illegal too. And they say monogamy, you can only have one wife. So this was not a moral issue, guys. This issue was, we need to preserve the white race in regards of numbers, culture, and political power, right? So now when we having this conversation about polygamy, guys, you now have become a white Protestant. Us Hebrew Israelites, culturally speaking, we are white Protestant. We could talk about shalom as much as we want. But a lot of our views and points of views and political points of views and things of that nature unconsciously have become white Protestant. That's not our culture, my beloved brothers and sisters. All right, so this is Reynolds, the guy who sued the federal government and lost, right? It says, in Reynolds versus United States, the Supreme Court did just that by equating polygamy with Asiatic and African people, then equating political scientific, quoting political scientists. This guy was a propagandist, right? Francis Limber linked between polygamy and stationary that's like debauchery. Limber was among the country's leading economists, having written influential political scientific tests, and also a former slave owner. Okay? Of course he's going to have these racist views. And this is what they do every single time. When they're trying to bring an argument, they'll bring in the so-called experts, pay them a little money, okay? Or a lot of them may already have these racial issues or these bias, but then they have a PhD, they have a degree, so it becomes, law. It says in 1855, two decided, before Reynolds, Limber wrote in an article using the first person singular, inviting his readers to form the question of Mormon citizenship in us versus them. So it was like, it became so like the division between white people that white Protestants began to call Mormons, who were also white, and the answer to go back to Germany, as them, right? And for those that don't know, this was the First Amendment. This is the First Amendment, right? And still it is, right? It says, the First Amendment provides that Congress make no laws respecting an assembly of religion or prohibiting its free exercise. It protects freedom of speech, the press, assembly, and the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. You would think they were allowed, right, with this already in the paper. I mean, this already in the Constitution, excuse me. They will allow polygamy for religious belief. But it's a shame that even until this day, and I'm not into politics, I'm apolitical, that you don't have black and brown people that this culture came from us, not them. There were white people fighting this culture that was not even theirs originally. They would not practice polygamy in Germany, in Europe. Let's see here. Okay, it says this is the guy who Francis Lembar. While Lembar admits that there has been a few examples to, this is important, because they brought in history, European history, to show that monogamy was always, or monogamy can be used as a pretext for citizenship in European countries. It says, Lembar admits that there has been a few examples to the prevalence monogamy spirit of our Western Caucasian race is occasion of whiteness with citizenship, and monogamy was all too clear. Let me start in the bottom. Lembar published the article, the Supreme Court in Reynolds transformed his view into legal precedent by linking polygamy to partly backwards Asiatic and African people and to a primitive form of government, right? So they used to view this culture as primitive, right? Here we go. Mr. the Coon, the Mormon Coon, right? This was a actual song. You guys could look it up. It's still on YouTube. It's a little bad. You could hear it. It's like old song, 1905. So even the music industry got involved, right? So this is the lyrics. I'm just going to go into real quick. It says, a coon, which is, that's what you call black people back then. A coon named Joseph skipped the town one day. No one knew just where he went away until one night a friend, he got a note and was from Joseph, or they put EPH as a short. And this is what he wrote. I'm out in Utah, in the Mormon land, and going to stay because I'm living grand. I used to rave about a single life. Now every day I got a brand new wife. I have a big brunette and a blonde to pet. I have got a short, fat, thin, and tall. I have got a Cuban gal and a Zulu pet. They came in a bunch when I call, and that's not all. I got a pretty one too. Got a I have a homely few. I get them black and I cone something. I can't pronounce what this is like. I guess this is Ebonics for at the time. I could spare 6 or 8. Shall I ship them or on freight? For I am the Mormon Coon. So any man or black man that used to have multiple wives or be in that situation was associating with Mormonism, right? So it was propaganda all through the early Americans in the term of the 15th century, right? And let's see here. Okay. This article goes into, not this article. Let me go to here. This is the article that I wanted to go first. So this guy here, Francis, he used a historical reference to show that Napoleon had these questions in regards of people coming into France. And there were Jews coming into France, and he was asking these questions in particular, right? And he used this as a reference on why we should not allow polygamy, or the argument of although in the Constitution, the First Amendment, they have freedom of religion and freedom of expression and freedom of press, particularly freedom of expressive religion freedom. They say, well, we Europeans did not allow polygamy in ancient culture, and he brought this article or this argument because this guy was an historian, so to kind of bring this argument that it is okay to exclude Mormons from this law or not allow this to become legal and still have the freedom of religion, right? So it says, but let me read it on the top, and then I'll go down the bottom. It says, matrimonial forms, this is I don't know from marry. Matrimonial form has long been linked to citizenship. Napoleon conceived an assembly of Jewish nobles. So in history, in the year 1806, he dealt with some Jewish nobles, right? And let me read down in the bottom, get to the point. It says, his representative asked those prominent Jews to answer 12 questions with answers showing them worthy or enjoying the totality of their rights as Frenchmen. Meaning, if you want to become a Frenchman, you want to be part of our culture, I got these 12 questions for you. And this is one of the 12 questions. The first question was, are the Jews permitted to have more than one wife? The noble Jews respond, including reassurance that Jews were monogamous, satisfied Napoleon. So he used this quote or used this part of history that was sufficient for I don't know all the other 11 questions, but this was one of the 12 questions to become a citizen Frenchman, right? But what people need to understand that these were the Ashkenazi Jews in Europe. At that time, the majority of the Jews, the real Jews, got kicked out of Spain, right? 1492. The Papa Bull, when you read all, they kicked out the Jews and things of that nature. And then you got letters within Sephardic Judaism in Spain that they found out they were Jews in Eastern Europe, and they would say, well, what tribe are you from? And they said, well, we're not tribe. We're not from any tribe. We're converted. We'll go into that history as well. Right? So Ashkenazi formally banned polygamy in the 10th century. Other Jews never did stop until the modern era when several governments banned it. So a lot of time we were forced to ban polygamy, right, because of the government we was under. We all know that Rome, right, banned it before Christ, years before Christ, right? And when the 10 horns began to become its own independent governance, like Napoleon and the French and the British and all those folks, they began to adopt those same culture, right? Let me see. Okay, we went here already. Let me go here. Let me see. Romans marriage rule was always Roman law. Okay, this is going into that. Romans began to adopt monogamy, but this was an issue with the Jews. But Jews were still practicing polygamy, because what happened at that time is that when the Jews were in Israel before the destruction of the Second Temple, they allowed polygamy because we was kind of like a little sovereign, somewhat nation. We still had to, get honor to Caesar. That's why the Pharisees asked Christ, do you pay taxes to Caesar? Right? To tempt him, because they had an agreement with Caesar, right? So, but after the second temple was destroyed, in the diaspora, the Jews had a problem. They didn't have a homeland, so they had to kind of adopt a lot of these laws and things of that nature. Now, a lot of Jews may say, or a lot of brothers may say, well, we can't practice polygamy because it's not legal. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. But the problem that I have is when people are telling me it's not of God. Hey, brother, you being wicked. You thinking like in the flesh. Brother, you could take a kick rocks with that. This is our culture. And we as men, we have to stand up for our culture and not allow these beta males, with all the respect, a lot of them in these Christian churches, that their wife won't allow it. Because, I'm hearing a lot of conversation about people like, what about your wife? What they saying? This had nothing to do with my wife. I don't need her approval. And any man that says you need an approval for your wife have to get head examined. Like I mentioned before, man, I'm giving you guys the cheat code. If you wait on your woman, if you wait on women to decide, they're never going to decide. You got to move forward. They either will follow or leave you. Either or works for me. Some guys, there's some problems there. But we'll leave it at there. Let's see here. This is a good book. You could go in. You could study in regards of early America. We're gonna hear the lady a little snippet on her book, and I got the interview also in the community section, right? So. The issue was not that polygamy was something that we didn't follow. It was not part of early America. And the book here and the lady in the interview, I might touch on this. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to get strike with any strikes or what have you, copyright strikes. But this clearly shows that this was an issue early on in America. This was an issue that they wanted to combat because they felt threatened by this and the culture that came from this. Yes, it's the same issue. And this is not, and let me get rid of this. We're talking about the Hebrew. They got scared of this, the menorah, the people of the book, right? And the reason why is because history repeats itself. In the same way, the ancient Egyptian, who was just as dark as us, made a decree that if a woman, Hebrew woman has a son, kill the child, keep the woman, because every society was always threatened by us to what? Multiply. Israelites don't die, we multiply. And when you look at the scripture, and when you look at the prophecy and everything that happened in the Old Testament, it was for our what? Learning and instruction. It does matter. Numbers do matter. It is no conversation. It is no surprise to me that now they're making a big issue about the war and the Latinos coming in. They're not 20% of the population because numbers do matter, my friends. So I'm speaking specifically to my Hebrew Israelite sisters here, specifically. Right? Ain't time for you, if you're going to start a career, it's a career that you could help your family, not you. And when I mean your family, not you and your kids, meaning your husband. And if you're going to deal with being a career, then guess what? You should give your husband a wife so she could bear children, his heir. Because it's all about numbers. And if they always been afraid about our numbers increasing, that goes to show you that's our strength. That's how part of that is a threat to them, showing you that that's something we should be talking about and thinking about. How can we increase our numbers? Fair use. I'm gonna show play 10 seconds of it, and I'm gonna I want to play different parts of it because I want to kind of give you guys a snippet of this conversation. Okay, I got the entire conversation in the community section. You guys could check it out on your own and take a listen and buy that book because it goes into that history. Fair use.
Around marriage, power, and society. And partly what I came to realize was that polygamy, in fact, was ubiquitous in early America, that very many Native American groups practiced it, that African Americans practiced it.
You heard what she said? That in early America, many Native Americans practiced it. Before the white man got involved, the white Protestant, pushing their views on us. And because we didn't have the right numbers. Talk about these things, guys. It's time for us to unite forces. That's why you single mothers out there, start bringing your sexual market up by teaming up with another sister and say, you know what? I got kids here. The father's not taking care of him. Let's team up, right? With another, let's team up and let's get a good man. Or you single mothers, if those men that you have a child with, maybe it's time for you to start working things out with the father of your children. And guess what? Bringing another woman in to help him out. It's time for us to unite forces, guys, because there's strength in numbers, right? Fair use.
That some Protestants endorsed it and that it was central.
So some Protestant endorsed it because, see, you got to understand that the power elite, they were not really Christians. The power elite were people that they wanted to keep the white supremacy power. They wanted to keep the white number up and the white culture as being the prominent culture. That's why the Mormon was a threat, because it was not a culture that they endorsed and they could control. Because if you allow polygamy, and also allowed mixed marriage, they would know within 3 or 4 generations, they will lose numbers in a great deal.
To a number of moments of importance in early America.
It's really interesting to hear you say that polygamy was a ubiquitous practice in North America, because there really just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of literature on this topic. Do you know why historians of early America have not really looked into, or perhaps been reluctant to look into, the history of polygamy?
Well, there are obviously a few exceptions, but nobody has written a book like this one. Most of the books on polygamy in the early modern era are about the theories of polygamy, largely in Europe. And of course, there's a lot on the polygamy controversies involving the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Right. So every time you hear polygamy, they always associate polygamy with the Mormons, as if they was the only one introducing this. Right. That's why you have to study to show yourself approved. So let's go to another segment real quick.
So, Sarah, if we want to understand the early American history of polygamy, when and with whom do we really need to look at to see the start of this marital practice?
Well, most Native groups in North America recognize some form of plural marriage.
So when
So
the Native American, the indigenous people, known today as the Latinos, Mexicans, Native Americans, we all indigenous. We're already practicing this. So my Latinos, if you want to go back to your roots, this is part of your roots too.
it was usually limited to an elite few. So it was, in fact, practiced for centuries before the controversies in the 19th century.
Right, because you used to marry different women from different tribes to make peace. So if I had an enemy and we were always fighting with one another, part of our fighting, part of our peace treating was, you know what, brother, I'm gonna give you my daughter, and then you know what, you're gonna give me yours, and we're gonna marry. So my son is gonna be, related to you, your grandson, and the daughter, the son, or the daughter you have with your, with my daughter. Now we're gonna be family. We have to bring these. We got to talk about this, and I'm not here to push polygamy on people. I'm here to get rid of the disparity, the asinine argument that it was never part of our culture. That and the damnable blasphemy that it goes against Scripture. Fair
You're
use.
talking about a setting with enslavement, which means there were severe restrictions on what Africans and African Americans could do. So, how exactly did West Africans continue their practice of plural marriage and adapt it to this new?
Even during slavery, we were doing this. So listen to the whole thing. You guys could go on your own and listen to go into. I don't want to play too much because I don't want any copyright strike. But it's important, guys. It's important for us to know our history and don't get caught up with our emotions about certain subjects. Okay? Yes, just because it feels weird to you, it doesn't mean it ain't right. And I chose this subject because I know is a button pusher, especially for you so-called wannabe Christian sisters, Israelite community coming in our conversation about men, try to correct us about this. We don't need some revelation from God to tell us what we need to do. We have already too much data in regards to this subject. So what I want people to understand, and I want people to take from this conversation is that just because something doesn't seem natural to you, it doesn't mean it's not right. Just because something seems like it is old-fashioned, we have to get away from these words. Oh, that's not modern. That's ancient. That's how we used to do it back in the day. That's not how we do it now. Because that's exactly the rhetoric that the white Protestant used to use to discredit polygamy back in the day. Polygamy is what? Primitive. It's backwards. It's savages. So I mean, then what? Jacob was a savage? Abraham was a savage? King David was a savage? Because sometimes we put spell on each other. Oh, we have to be modern. What does that mean? Isn't the scripture says that, the portion of Israel is the Ancient of Days? But our portion, matter of fact, let me get that scripture, right? Our portion is not like them. I believe it's in Jeremiah, right? Jeremiah. I'll get in a few minutes, right? Because we need to understand that I'm not knocking the white Protestant for enforcing their rules or their culture on other people, because that's their culture. If monogamy is part of their culture, fine. But don't allow anyone to degrade your culture, to look down on your culture, look down on more importantly, the Bible, and do not allow anyone to explain your book to you, Hebrews. Any arguments, any disagreement about the calendar or what have you, is going to be within Hebrew Israelite men. No Gentile and no women involved with this conversation. Us men will work it out. All due respect to the brothers, the Gentiles. Now, the Gentiles that are proselytes, okay, they will follow our culture, but our arguments and what we need to establish that on our own. Shout out to all the Gentiles out there that are called by the name of the Most High, the proselytes, the converts. Because this is not about racism, guys. This is not about being a separatist. This is not about thinking that we're better than other people. But we have to defend our nationality and defend our culture. Do not allow any Gentile or woman to men to make you feel less than because you are pro-polygamy. It's part of our culture. Get over it, sister. Because a lot of these sisters are hiding. They are hiding under Hebrew garments, but they're white Protestant, culturally speaking. If anybody tells you that the Holy Spirit is telling them something different that the scripture is telling them, run. That's the devil in which the Bible speaks of. This is our culture. This is our governance, the way we run our nation. And yes, we are in the diaspora. We don't have our land. We don't have our borders yet. But we got the book. We still have our Constitution. So if anybody wants to call in, you're more than welcome. The number is 646-450-2013. Enough of this, making feel like, hey, brother, it's like, because every time we have this conversation, brothers start feeling like it is a lustful thing. It's all about lust. Hey, brother, you gotta deal with semen retention, which you do. Hey, brother, that's not of the Most High, which is not. If it's in the Bible, it's of the Most High. What are you talking about? We can't separate the spirit from the words in the book. It's in the book. We would not know about the spirit if it wasn't for the book. And I'm going to move on from this subject eventually. But I just wanted to just touch on this historical reference about this, because it's one of those things, guys, that, we are now in the infant state of waking up from our sleep. We're still in the valley of the dry bones. We're just waking up. We're still in Ezekiel. Uh, 37. We just got up. We're just waking up. We're still figuring things out. And that's why I believe every generation, the Most High reveal new things. Every generation, the Most High reveal new things. And we have to stop acting like our generation is the generation. We're selfish. We thought we were the generation in the 80s and in the 90s and the early 2000s. Things doesn't change when it comes to people thinking the world evolves around their generation. Christ is coming here between any year now. That's the same nonsense they were teaching and they were promoting in the 90s when I was in One West. Christ was coming for the year 2000s about now, right now. Telling brothers not to go to school because their brother Christ is coming. And this is no shot to those brothers and things of that nature, but I see it. Every generation is always thinking, we're the generation that Christ is coming. And we're not thinking ahead. We're not thinking for the future. We're in the infancy of this thing, guys. We ain't ready. Christ is not coming yet. I don't care what you're hearing out there in the news. We have to start building a better version of us. I don't care what's going on in the political world. I'm not saying that to prepare, but we have to also and stop being so selfish to think it's all about us. What about our children? Because I would have done a lot different things if I thought I would still be here in the early 90s. Because I thought, the earth would not make it to the year 2000. It's not about us, guys. And the reason why I know that we're not ready and Christ is not coming, because we ain't ready. So I appreciate and I want to thank you guys for allowing me to rant for these few minutes. And, I'm doing these small segments because I feel that, it's best to just, hit it and move on to the next subject and so forth, so on. I might come back tomorrow. I got some ideas and so forth, so on. I'm going to be doing a interview with Brother New Breed. I was supposed to have done it today, but I want to do it probably Thursday. I may come on tomorrow and just say hello for a few minutes, maybe an hour or two, if the spirit moves me. Once again, I just want to thank you guys for sharing and having this conversation with me. But look at these records. I put all the information below so you can look at it on your own. And it gave me an input that it's kind of saying, you know what? The only reason why we're even having this conversation is because the white Protestant elite in the 19th century began to change the political landscape to make it seem immoral and illegal dealing with the polygamous culture. We have to just get out the way and follow our culture. So if you have any suggestions, I know some brothers asked me about some biblical questions about what do I think about Genesis chapter 15 and 12 in regard to with the Most High told Abraham that in certainty that your children will serve 400 years. And then after 400 years, they will come out with great substance. I'm paraphrasing. Do I believe that plays today in any way? I don't. I could maybe touch on that maybe tomorrow because when you read it, it says that 4 generations will pass because of the sin of the Amorites, and then after that, your children will return. So the 400 years is referring from the time when Isaac was born until we left Egypt, because the land that was not ours was also including the land of Canaan. Okay, but can it have duality of scripture or a prophecy? Maybe, but at this point, man, this is where I'm at right now. Prophecy, we have to look, we have to watch, but we got to build. The kingdom of heaven is within us, right? We have to build this. And it starts by building men. You build the men, then that man builds the family. That's how we build men. And we got to build men that we don't allow no woman, man, or child to compromise our principle. And once we have those type of men, okay, that's when the world is going to notice. That's when we're going to get a step closer to the second coming of Christ. But right now, it's not yet. My personal opinion. I could be wrong. But one thing I realize about me, that when I believe I'm right, I'm going to do it 100% until I'm proven wrong. So with that, I just want to say shalom, peace and blessings, and may the Most High watch you and keep you. Shalom.